everyone. Today's video is the start of a new angle for my channel. I've told lots of Oldham history, I've told lots of history from around various different parts of the country, graveyards, the works, and I know a lot of stories. And I want to tell tales about folk tales, things that have gone on in various towns, including my hometown, Oldham. I want to be able to tell you about all these fabulous ghost stories that I know. I've got plenty of stories that I can read to you. And actually, I was going to read a story that I wrote. So I wrote a story on the back of the Boggart. It's a well-known tale. Well, to certain people it is. But then I thought, no, why would I read from a book? Because that's just not my presentation style. So I've told this story in my own words, but I've illustrated it. And I don't know, if you like it, let me know. I'm going to be doing it regardless. But you know, if you want me to tell a particular story that you know of, let me know. And let me know what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching, everyone. I want to tell you the story of an old tale that comes from Oldham. Now, this story relates to an old house that used to stand just off Chamber Road. And the hall itself was called Chamber Hall. And many, many years ago, back in the 1600s, the house itself was very old and it was owned by various families. I believe the first family to own the hall were actually from over in the Barnsley area. And this was back when Oldham was a little hamlet. And what happened is you would have these big houses that would stand at various points. I mean, you had this one, you had Westwood House, you had the Barker Estate up in Oldham. The list goes on. And that's how it was. And then aside of these big houses were these farms, and then obviously Oldham became industrialised. However, before all of that took place, in the 1600s, there was a family lived there that was called the Rowe family. It was a father, a mother, a couple of children. They had servants who would do various tasks in and around the hall just to make their lives a little bit easier. Anyhow, they moved into the hall and they lived there for a while. And then strange things started happening, and basically the hall had a boggart. And this boggart was quite mischievous, and what it would do, it would start with them and it would play tricks on them. And it were quite evil in some instances, and it'd do nasty things if it didn't get its way. So anyhow, the family, getting to the end of the tether, went, well, we're going to need to do something about this because this boggart's just not going to leave us alone. So what they did, they had a chat with the boggart and said, look, we'll make sure that you get a really nice plate of food, which is what we're going to be eating. We'll make sure you get that every single evening. And apparently the boggart had said to them, that's fine, you just need to leave it outside my room, because it had a room in the hall. And they referred to it as the haunted room, but it's actually where the boggart used to crawl out from. Anyhow, this situation seemed to appease the boggart, and it were happy with everything, and it just went about its business. And every night they'd put a meal out, and the boggart was really happy and everything was lovely. But then a few years later, they ended up getting a new servant, and this girl was an housemaid, and she used to do various tasks around the house. And this particular night, she'd been putting this food out for this boggart outside the haunted room every single night, then going about her business, and as it was. But at some point, she made a decision that actually leaving the family's food outside this room for the boggart, basically, the boggart wasn't good enough to receive the food. So what she decided to do is to put milk outside there and barley bread. So a very basic meal. Anyhow, that night, the boggart must have come out to get its meal, went absolutely crazy, went after the servant girl, went into her room. Apparently she was doing some work and the air filled with dread. And she was eyeing him. Anyway, later that night, she got into bed, she was trying to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden the covers got whipped off the bed. And the iron that she'd been using was pressed against her face, and the boggart started laughing like manically and said to her, remember milk and barley bread? Apparently she started screaming. The whole house got woke up and there was a big hoo-ha. Next morning she packed her bags and left, and apparently, rumour has it, she had that scar on her face for the rest of her life, so it was what it was. Anyhow, after all this happened and the Boggart obviously kicked off again, the family were like, well, we can't stay here because this thing's just never going to let us live it down. You know, we'll just never be able to be happy here. So apparently they started packing up. This was during the day. And then the Boggart somehow roused at the middle of the day and shouted out from its room, just give me a minute, I'll put my clogs on and I'll come with you. So they were like, well, we can't leave because it'll just follow us. Anyhow, after all this had gone off and they realised they couldn't get away from it, they thought, right, what we're going to do? So they ended up ringing this vicar. Not ringing, but go and getting this vicar. I don't know, maybe from the church in Wearmouth. Could be St John's, could even be Oldham Church, I'm not too sure, but ended up going and getting this vicar, and this vicar came to house, and for days he come in and he were doing all sorts of prayers, and apparently he were fasting and all sorts, trying to get rid of this entity, this Boggart. In the end, the Boggart said to him, tell you what, let's leave it as it is. I'll call it quits. I can be buried in the grounds, but you need to bury me with a live gamecock. I don't know what relevance the live gamecock had, but it was mentioned that it was something to do with how the Boggart had once lived its life. Anyhow, they ended up burying the Boggart in a hole, and they buried a live gamecock with it, and then apparently everything went quiet for a while. The Rose ended up selling the house on, and another family moved in. I think they were called the Wrigleys. And after that, it was said that there was all sorts of things that started up in the house. The Rose left, the Wrigleys moved in, and things started up in the house again. Things being moved. There was apparently a suit of armour that was in the house, and if you went anywhere near it, or someone did go near it one night, and it ended up collapsing on them. I think it did them a bit of damage, to be fair. But this suit of armour was central to it, and someone, I think, suggested that the armour was once worn by the Boggart when there was a living being. So it's all very strange, but the reality is what happened was the Boggart, no one really ever saw it again, although these strange things happened. And then some years later, Chamber Hall was demolished, and in place of that now is Chamber Hall Close, which still stands to the day. Who knows, maybe the Boggart's still buried there with that gamecock. I suppose nobody will know.